And coming up on 6:30, good morning to you. I'm Sukanya Krishnan.
I'm Jennifer Lammers. It is Thursday morning. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a lot to get to, but first, we're going to be talking about Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria. Happened 1 year ago today.
Yes, ripping through the island nation of Puerto Rico. It was the strongest hurricane to make landfall there in more than 80 years. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost and billions of dollars in damage.
And today, some residents are still struggling to recover, trying to put back together their damaged homes and properties. And joining us now this morning from San Juan, the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló. Governor, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thank you so much, Jen and Sukanya. Thank you for the opportunity.
So we're talking, $90 billion in damage. More than 3,000 people have lost their lives as a result of the storm. Can you first give us a picture of what Puerto Rico looks like today, now 1 year later?
Well, it's been a long recovery process in Puerto Rico, no doubt about it. This was the most devastating storm in the modern history of the United States. And it's taken quite a bit of time to recover. There's been a lot of bureaucracy. As you know, Puerto Rico being a territory, it is my view that we're treated as second-class citizens, but there is also the hope that we can rebuild stronger and better than before if we do get those resources coming to Puerto Rico. So towards the tail end of the recovery, still a lot to do, still a lot of vulnerable infrastructure, but our people have shown resiliency and strength, and I'm confident that that's going to be the main ingredient for us to rebuild stronger than before.
Governor, I know a lot of people are going to say, just what you said right now, being treated as second-class citizens. Your reaction, and why do you say that? Does it come down to the death toll numbers, the lack of federal government aid, or what is it that makes Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rico feel that they're being treated as second-class citizens by the federal government?
Well, as you know, there were several catastrophes in the United States last year, so you have comparables. You have comparables with Florida, with Texas, California, and so forth. And what we've seen is in the process of recovery, particularly in the in the bureaucracy, Puerto Rico has had to deal with unseeming amounts of bureaucracy that other jurisdictions don't have to deal with, and that really delays the recovery. It delays the fact that people are not getting some of the funding. A lot of people have been rejected from some of that funding. And of course, again, it boils down to the main difference. The main difference is that Puerto Rico is a territory. We don't have representation. We don't have voting rights at the federal level. And, you can see a significant difference in the treatment because of that.
And the need is still there. As I understand, the infrastructure is still extremely fragile. God forbid another hurricane comes through.
Yes.
Is Puerto Rico ready for something like this now?
Even a tropical storm, they're saying, could devastate the country.
Yeah, well, there are several roads to discuss over here. Number one, our infrastructure is still vulnerable. I mean, we're talking about, we still have about 55,000 folks with blue tarps for roofs. We really need to attend to that situation, and that's been one of the holdups that we've had in the past, but we're confident now with the relationship with HUD, the funding that's going to be flowing in the next coming weeks. We should be able to impact all of those people that don't have roofs. Similarly, the electric grid is very weak. We've lifted it up, but it is now our commitment to make it into a modern energy grid, one that can be a model in the whole region, one that has over 40% renewables, and where the people are, the customer is the key deciding factor, not the government. But by the same token, we've also learned from this disaster. We've learned, and we started changing protocols for public health care response. We've established different posts for commodities distributions along Puerto Rico. We've established different lines of communication. When Maria came, all communication lines broke down, so we've started putting SATCOMs everywhere across Puerto Rico. So while it is true that our infrastructure is still vulnerable, and we would certainly feel the brunt of another storm or hurricane. There are other parts that have made significant progress that'll make us stronger and respond better.
Let's talk about the death toll, because there's been a lot of back and forth, especially with the President of the United States, talking about how many people died when he was there as opposed to the estimates after as a result of the hurricane. Do you feel like that's just simply a black eye once again, not really addressing the devastation of what happened and how the infrastructure was just left to be decimated the way it was?
Yeah, well, it is my view that there is no need to question the pain of the victims and the people of Puerto Rico. This was a devastating storm. There were a certain set of circumstances. No communication, no energy, and little access to roads. Few folks were able to get to their jobs, particularly in the government side. So we had a very primitive protocol to get the death toll count. In the onset of the storm, in the aftermath of the storm. But after that, we decided to go to an independent study. They took their time. I'm a scientist by professional training, and I wanted to get this out, have some independent validation, a study that it showed how it arrived at the estimate. And it is my view that it was a very well done, study, a very well done estimate, and we can begin to have a sense of closure and solace with the people that lost their lives.
Governor, my question is: would you like an apology from the president?
Yeah.
Would that make everything okay if you got a formal apology as to the numbers?
I think there's many things that need to happen. I mean, I think, one, I would really like the president to send a message that he stands with the people of Puerto Rico. I think that would, and particularly with those victims and family members of the victims, I think that would show empathy and respect that hasn't been shown to this point. I think that a commitment towards getting the resources over here and attending to some of our petitions that haven't been attended to and lost in bureaucracy would also be something that would be a significant step.
Yeah.
And then jumping on the great efforts that HUD is making here in Puerto Rico, I have to say that our relationship with HUD has been very good. I think we're going to have an opportunity to rebuild Puerto Rico stronger than before.
And there's been reports of corruption, and also when it comes to contractors that are rebuilding, that are doing the wrong thing for the people. How have you been able to get on top of that? Because that is the responsibility of you and local officials to get on top of that to protect the Puerto Rican people.
Right. Well, let me first say that I have zero tolerance for corruption, and our government has shown as much. Any indication of corruption we have dealt with here in Puerto Rico. Corruption is a global ill. And what matters is what you're doing to prevent it. I'll tell you what we're doing. We created an anti-corruption code in Puerto Rico. We've elevated the penalties for corruption crimes in Puerto Rico. We have an anti-corruption task force with the federal government. We're working on a transparency portal so that everybody, all of the citizens, can see what money is coming in and where it's being spent and what the results of that money are being. So we really want to make this the most transparent and effective rebuild in the history. I think we owe it to the victims of Puerto Rico. I think we owe it to all of the taxpayers, and I think we owe it to our people to have this opportunity to rebuild. So corruption is a global ill. I mean, the federal administration has had to deal with its share of corruption charges as well. What matters is, what do you do as a government? Are you going to have a tough stance against corruption, or are you just going to let it go by?
Governor Rosselló, a lot of lessons learned, and our thoughts and prayers are with you, and we wish everybody in Puerto Rico the best as we look at this 1 year mark of Hurricane Maria. Thank you for joining us live.
Thank you, and thank you to all of the people that helped out in the aftermath of the storm. That was the critical ingredient for us to have an opportunity to rebuild stronger than ever before.
And that means a lot to hear from you.
Part of New York's extended family, that's for sure.